it's a project. Alright, let's go ahead and create a simple to-do list. So let's create our index.html file. And also let's create our styles.css. Start from the index file. The simple to-do list is a basic to-do list that will help you understand how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript work together. That will be good for guys who are new into front-end development, to be good for their portfolios. So we just exclamation mark, enter. Now we'll change this, and we just say simple to-do list, and then we link our CSS with the relationship. Relation. We say it's a style sheet. We do our href. We say styles.css. Some use index.css, whatever the case. Just know what you named your file. Then that will be all for the header. We come down to the body. Let's use a main, just a very basic HTML, and then let's have a div, and let that div carry a class of container that will contain every of the elements. Then in the first thing, let's have a h2, and let that header, give it a class that says header. And then let's just say simple to do. And then after that, let's have our input where we're going to type the text that we want to do. So we say input, and then it's self-closing. Then let's give it a class of say input. Let's also give it a placeholder that will say enter your text here, or let's say your text here. Okay, and that's for our input. And after the input, let's have a button, and let that button carry a class that just says btn. And let the button just have add task. Let it just say, and when we save that, we have that. Let's run it, go live. We should have that display. And the last thing we're going to have, last but not the least, is let's have a URL element. But of course, the URL element requires an li, requires you to have an li to list. That's a list item to list on the display on the web page. But we're not going to add an li element here. We're going to do that using JavaScript. What we just need to do now is to go to our styles.css. Let's make it a little bit better. So we just target the body, and the body we can say font family. Let's use sans serif. And then let's say the margin, let's default every margin to 0, and then every padding to 0. Let's give it a background of say let's say F4. Okay, sorry, F4. We'll save that. Now let's come down and let's target our main, and let's give it a width. A width of, let's say, 100 view width, and let's also give it a height of say 100 view height, and let's display flex so we can move it around. Let's move it to the center horizontally. We use specify content to do that. That is center. Let's align it vertically. We use align items to do that. Align item center. And then let's target the container. Let's target the div with a class of container. Let's also display it as flex. display that. Let's give it a direction, flex direction. Let's make the direction column, not horizontal the way it is. I just want to say something. Let me say border. Let me say 2 pixel solid red. Okay, let me expand the width by saying width. Let's say 400 pixel. Good. Now let me say align item center, so everything will be centered. Good. Let's also give it a box shadow of, let's say 0 0 of 10 pixel, and then let's say RGB, then we have 0 0 0 then 0.5. we save that, but then I want to give it a background of white color. That's FFF, control save. I also want to give it let's say padding of, let's say 10 pixel and 15 pixel. That's 10 for top and bottom, 15. I do not like that, so I'll just say 15 pixel and 20 pixel. Then I save that. Okay. Let's give it a gap. Let's give it a gap of, say 20 pixel. Okay, good. Now let's target our h2, which we actually call .header, and then let's I don't like the margin is too much, margin bottom is too much, so let's make it 0, and let's see. I think that way is okay. And there's gap, I think is too much. Let's make it like 15 pixel, and let's see. I think something like this is better. Then port test. Let's look at our input, which we also give a class. That's that input. And let's say we have a padding of, say 10 pixel, top and bottom, then 15 pixel left and right. Okay, let's give it a border radius of, say 8 pixel, and then let's also target our button.btn, and let's say padding of, let's also say 10 pixel, then 15 pixel. We save that. Let's give it a border radius of, let's say 5 pixel. Let's give it a background color of, let's say 28A745. Good. Let's give it a color, a white color. Let's say we don't want any border, we say border none. Let's just give a little bit margin bottom there, let's say for instance 5 pixel. Good. Then we can go to the container itself, and then the container we can give it a border radius of, say another 8 pixel. Then we can go ahead and remove this, and then we save that. I think that's okay. The next, we now have to go to JavaScript to make it so that when we enter a text here and click on the add tags, we'll be able to see our tags being added on the screen. So let's create a file, JavaScript file. We'll call it script.js. So of course we go to index.html, and then let's add script.js mainly after the main, that's before the closing body. We put script, and we close it. We have the source as ROC, and we have it as script.js. Then I will now go to script.js. The first thing I want to do is to create a function add task. And that function will be called upon when we click on the add task button or the button. So then we have to go to the button, which is add task button, and then we create an on-click, and then we add task storage. Good. I have that. We go to function here. We select task impute. Let's call it task impute. We say it's equal to. So it's document dot get element by ID, and that is task impute. So we're trying to grab a reference of the input. That's whatever is typed in the input box here. So therefore we have to go to our input, and okay, let's do it this way. So let's create an ID here, and we'll create an ID based on what we've already named it, namely the task input. So we grab this ID here. Is the ID we've grabbed here to create a reference of the input here. So that is it here. And then let's call this, let's say let task text. We're trying to grab whatever that has been typed on the input box. We say let it be task input, the reference that we've grabbed, dot value, then dot trim. What? So we use dot value. We use dot value to grab what was typed here, and then we use dot trim to remove every white space or extra space. In other words, if I mention someone type something like say go to market, but every of the white space has been removed, what we should get or what should be displayed will be go to market. So every white space should be removed. And when we've done that, we now say, okay, if with an if statement, if peradventure task text, that's nothing was typed, and I actually want to add nothing, you should do what? You should do nothing. Simply return nothing, do nothing. Good. Now we have that. Now remember that we have let's also grab a reference of this UL. So we give the UL an ID, and let's call that task list. Let's call that task list. So we also go here and we say let task list, let it be equal to document dot get element by ID. And what do we call that ID? We'll call it task list. Sorry, our ID is task list. Then, like, you know that a UL, ordered list or ordered list, there should be an li element, list item for it. It's the li that should be displayed on the screen. With a UL, nothing is displayed on the DOM. So, but there's no li here. So let's create an li. Let's say let li be equal to document.create element. And what element are we creating? We are creating an li, and then we now say li.innerHTML. Want to display this? We use template literals, and then dollar symbol. What do we want? We want to get whatever that have been typed here, which is stored as what? Task text. Sorry, task text. I want when it displays it, want it to also display this button, and that button should just be an X, simply this. So we use this button, this X, to delete, but when we get there, And when we get that now, we now say our tax. Okay, of course our tax list now, which is a reference of our ul dot append child What child do we want to append? The child we want to append is what? Li. Of course, this is the li that we've created. That's what we want to append. Good. So can we save that now? If we save that now, we'll now go and let's say type something. For instance, let's say go to market, for instance. So I'm clicking on go to market, and it's not responding. So what is the issue? What some minor thing that you cannot escape? So we'll look at it. Okay. Oh, I'm looking at what I have here. I have srpt. So I'll go back and I'll correct this. It's actually script.js, so we'll rename it and add an I to it. Scripts.js. Good. So when I come back now and then, let's say I retype go to market. You already have it here. Good. Now let's say I'll rest by 4 p.m. and then I add that task as well, so you can see the task has been added. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is let's clear the input field such that when we add a task, the input field will be clear. So just simply target the task inputs, use dot value to grab whatever was typed in there and set it to an empty string. Then we save that. So we can now see that when we add a task, the input field will be clear. Let's add another task. Good. Now let's go to our CSS. And our CSS, I want to target the URL. And on the URL, I want to remove the bullets, so I'll just say list style. Having list style, I'll say it's none. We'll remove the bullets. Then let me give it a padding of say 0. I want to clear every padding. Then let's give it a width of say 60%. Then I'll target our li. In our li, I'll say display flex. Sorry. Display flex, and I'll flex them. I'll support them to both ends of our width. That's using justify content, and I'll use a space between, and I'll save that. Good. I want to give it a background. Let's give it a background of say this. I want to give it a padding of say 8 pixels, and I want to separate each li by using a margin of say 10 pixels. Good. And then I also want to give it a border radius of say 5 pixels. Good. Oh no, that did not apply. 5 pixels. Well, let me make it 8 pixels. I think it's okay. Let's leave it that way for now. I'll go back to my script, and here I want to search that when we click on this button, we should be able to delete each task. So that's just simply as going to the button and add an on click, and that on click. I'm going to name it remove task, and then pass this into it to enable us remove the task. Then I'll create a function, and I'll say function remove task, passing a button into it, and then I'll say button dot parent element dot remove. And when I save that, I'll add a task again, add it, and I click here, and the task is removed. So I can remove the task. Alright, so let's have the save task function, so that we'll be able to save all our tasks in local storage. So we say function save task, system function save task, and then let's assign our task to an empty array, and then we use the document.query selector to select all ALI task list, to select all the ALI elements. So we use the query selector to select all the ALI elements that are in the UL with an ID. So let's look at our UL. Our UL has this ID of task list with an ID of task list. And when we do that, we use .for each to loop through each of the ALI. To loop through each of the ALI. And then for each that we go through, we should push it into our array, which is task. But then before we push it, let's do something. Let's replace the X button. That's this X. For instance, remember when we have something like this and we add the tags, this delete button X. Let's replace it with an empty string. And when we do that, we should also trim it. Use .trim. We should also use .trim to remove every white space. Okay, to remove every white space. And then when we do that, after that, pushing it into our array, we should be able to save it. What are we saving? We use localStorage .set item. What do we want to set? We want to set our task. Then using JSON.stringify, and then our task. Now with that, we've had our task. Okay, so it's task, task. So we can also make it task here. Yes. So any other place we have to make it task? No. Okay, that's it. So let's call this save task function on the remove task here. So we'll call the save task. I will should do the same thing on the add cat function. That is save task. And let's check for this let's check that what we've saved is in our local storage. So we'll go to our local storage. When we go here, we can say, okay, let's say just add this. Let's say do some laundry. Let's have this. Let's also say go to market also, and let's add this. Then if we go to inspect and we'll go to our console, then we'll type json.pass json.pass. Then we open this, and then we'll have local storage, of course, .get item. What item do we want to get now? We want to get our task. And should in case there is no task, just return this. Now if we enter this, you can see the tasks we have are read by 4 p.m. do some laundry, go to market. So with that, we have successfully saved. When we refresh, everything goes away. When we refresh, everything goes away. So the next function we want to work on is that we want to have the task. We want to have them such that when we refresh, we can also have them display on the DOM, on the screen, not on the local storage. So that's what we have to do next. So how do we do that? What we need to do is to go back to our local storage and retrieve those data from the local storage, have them displayed here. So more or less like we're doing exactly like the opposite of what we've just done. What we need to do now is to say function load task. However, though, if we save the task on our local storage, but when declare this function load task, sorry, then we can say let task be equal to, we can say JSON, sorry, it's capital, JSON.pass, and when we do that, we say local storage now .get item. Remember the first time we did set item, but now I want to retrieve them get item. So what item do we want to get? Remember that what we have, the item we have there, we call it task. That is what we have in our local storage, task. So we want to get all the items we have in our local storage, that's the li element that was saved there. But then, should in case nothing was saved, let's just use this. Should in case nothing was saved, this is an empty array. Now, if we do that, we can also say let task list be equal to document dot get element by ID. Now what ID do we want to have? We want to get the ID of our task list, the ID of our UL element. Remember, the UL element have an ID of task list. What we still want to do is that the data here that was saved, we want to retrieve it from the local storage, create an li element and append it as a child of this UL element so that it can be displayed on the screen. So we've grabbed the ID of this UL element, which is task list, and then when we grab that, what do we do next? When we grab it, we say task dot for each. Now every task we have to look through all the tasks that we've gotten from the local storage. We call each of them, let's call it task text. We look through each of them one after the other, and when we do that, we create an li element. Li be equal to document dot create element. We create an li element, that is li, and we create an li element, what do? We now use li.innerHTML using template literals. Then we want to scaling back, display our text. And then remember, it's not only our text. Remember that before we save at the local storage, this also has a button. That button has an X. That's what I mean is that when we go do something like this, when we add the tags, we see this X button here that is used to delete it. So we want to bring it back. Remember that before we saved it, we removed it before we saved it in local storage. Now that we want to retrieve it to the DOM, we have to also bring it back. So we'll bring back that X delete button. Remember the X delete button, remember it has a class. That class, we made it delete. And remember it also has an onClick. And then the onClick is remove task. That's the function we created to delete the task, remove task. And then when we do this, the next we just have to do is to say, when I use our task list, that is the UL, the ID of the UL that we grabbed, dot append child. We need to append the child. I want you that we are appending li. Now when we do this, we want this function to run after the HTML. So we'll go to the very top of our page, and then we use document dot add event listener, and then we use DOM content loaded. And then we call our function load tags here. Good. So now we save. You could see, let's say go to market, we add it, and let's refresh again. We have it. Now if I delete this two task and refresh it, something is wrong here. Let's go to market. Even if I delete and refresh, I still have it. That is not right. It's supposed to that when you delete it, you can have it again, but when you refresh, so let's look through and see what is the issue. Of course, that's on script, on JavaScript, so we have to check. Is it on the, no, not on the retriever. Okay, I think I've seen the issue here on the save task function. I was not supposed to put this here. This local storage.set item was to be after the loop. So I'll just remove it and bring it immediately after the loop. I think that should be the issue. That should be the problem. So let me delete again and refresh. I think that solves it. So now we can have this, add the task, we can have another one, add the task, and when we refresh, it stayed there because we're now retrieving it from local storage. So except we don't want the task, or maybe we're done with the task, we can delete the task. One more thing I think I should just do is to go to my style.css and then use this dot delete. Okay, let me do this here. Use this dot delete just add let's say background to that exporting. Just say background, let's just say red, so at least it shows that it's a delete, used for deleting it. Maybe I'll just say border none, and maybe I'll just give it, so maybe I'll just give it a padding of, let's say, 5 pixels. I think I'll just leave it like this. So this is our simple to-do list on how to build a very simple to-do list. Thank you for your time, and thank you for watching.